Hello, I'm Nelson Ford from the Gunsmith in Phoenix, Arizona. And I want to talk about the K frame, which is the workhorse, the police, Army, Navy workhorse for the last 100 years in America. And people know I like the old ones, and I know they don't understand that. And so what I did here was I came across this gun, customer brought in, and I wanted to, when I look at them, when I take them apart, they're a treasure trove for me. They're like a little jewelry box. There's all these little things in there that aren't in the new guns. Sure, the new guns have different looks and things, the power port and what have you, extra rounds. But when you go into these, you see what I like to see. A gun that was made as an impressive piece, quality wise, and the time they put in them and the things they did to try to make them right. So I left some screws out on this one. I'm going to pop it open. This is a model of 1905. They had the 1899, the original Army Navy, 1899 M&P, and then they had the 1902, and there was various changes, first, second, third change. This is a model of 1905, and it employs lots of the things that we use today in the gun. In other words, it's like the final destination from the experimentals. I mean, the first models, the 1899, was actually the ideas were put together in 94 along with the little iframe, and they had some ideas and they put them together. It was the first time the trigger guard was, part of the frame. Lots of things, the swing out cylinder. There were lots of things, just being developed and coming together. It must have been a very exciting time to watch. But this is the 1905. That's sort of the final frontier. It still has a long action. I'll explain that to you when we're inside. But when I say treasure trove, I don't have a screw on that grip. Comes right off. I don't have screws in the side plate. We just tap it a little bit, and she comes right off, just like that. I'm not at my bench, so at my bench I would do this, and it would come right out. So I'll put my glasses on, have my pointer here. First thing we see, very visible to the eyes, is the bushings, the two in the hammer and the one in the trigger. And a lot of people are so irritated by the hammers dragging on one side or the other side. The side of my hammer's got the scratch marks. What do I do about that? Back when Smith and Wesson had these little bushings in them, they had different names for them. Oiler bushings, I don't know, spacers. They stuck out just beyond a few thousandths beyond the hammer on both sides, two pieces, two of them here in the hammer, and they kept the hammer centered in the gun, and you could see on the side plate, right across the top, the bushings riding against the frame there, and so the hammer was kept in the middle. I mean, they don't even think like this today. And the trigger return box, and the reason I have the second gun out here, the other gun out here, was moved inboard without the second leaf spring, which you see on the 1899. It's hiding right here, right against the frame. Of course, there's the hammer spring, the hammer mainspring, the leaf. There's the fly, get that fly, and then there's the little leaf here that returns the trigger return system, which I think I can pop that off there and get you a shot of. But this trigger return rebound slide assembly is the name for this part. It actually has, I think, February 16th, 1906 stamped right on it. February 6th, 1906. And so that was the date, that was the time, that was the date they decided to go with it and mailed in the patents. The patent attorneys did their work, and that was done. And so there's a couple of things that happened here, but the patent dates being stamped on the part, beautiful thing to see. And the bushings spacing the parts, beautiful thing to see. Now, if you were in a situation where you had your gun upside down and you needed to load or unload it, like you're under a table or in a ditch or wherever, military or police or civilian, in a situation, this cylinder is staying out because there's a plunger and spring in the yoke to keep the cylinder, and there's a recess in the frame to keep the cylinder out. And then when you put this in, there's a little trick. You take your thumbnail and push it in so you can seat it all the way in. Not to mention the pre-1927s or 28s all had this beautiful mushroom on the end, making it pleasant to eject shells. And if the guns were dirty or you'd shot too many rounds and they were getting sticky, you had a nice large surface to push your palm of your hand against. But those are just some of the things that separate the early guns from the late guns. If you really want to see stuff, you could look at the taper they put on the barrel. So they made the barrel look as though it was made for the frame. And then the cylinder release latch, they undercut it and then cut dolly nice cuts around the screw head. And you had a little curved surface there. But the underside of the cylinder release latch is cut, relieved underneath. And it's just that beautiful stuff, you know. Just like I always ask my wife and people I'm watching TV with, why don't they make buildings like that anymore? They used to take so much time to do such a nice job. So a lot of people go, oh, 5 screws, it's a 5 screw. It's pre-1956, a 5 screw. What's really crazy is if we step back from the 1905 and go to the 1899, they tucked the spring assembly, and the trigger was exclusive for the spring assembly. They tucked it inside. So this is a pre-5 screw. They did make 4 screws at one time without the side plate screw up top. And then the 4th screw would be 1961 November. They got rid of, the plunger and spring being out here, and they stuffed it all on the inside. But this is 1899, predating the 1905 and the 1902 model, that were all 5 screws. But they ran their cylinder stop system all inboard, and so there is no forward screw of the trigger guard, and that creates an early 4 screw, and that's something a lot of people don't consider. 4 screws, there are 2 genres of them. There are the 1899 models that ran through 1902, and then there were the 1956 through 1961, where they had eliminated the bug screw up top in 56, September, my birthday, and then they eliminated the front screw up here November 61. These guns are just jewels. When you buy them, not only do you get good operating firearms, but you can see all these little things that happen along the way, and unfortunately things they got rid of because they became more obsessed with cost. And when I say that, I mean I had guys at Smith Wesson, 97 or 98. I called back and I was upset about some changes they made, and they said, Nelson, the guns are still being made. We can't make them the way we used to because the cost would be too high, and the guns would be off the market now, or they'd be really expensive commodities, and we'd be making fewer of them. I slightly lost my train of thought. I had a little train of thought going. Oh, yes. So I'm always doing the Richard Nixon peace signs and showing people how the hammer and trigger engage, this being the trigger side. And there's it's like a gear. There are 2 places where they interface. This is the long action. It ran until, they say, World War II, but there were those interim guns from early production, like 1946. They were trying to get rid of the long action parts, and they were cutting the hammers to put the safety bars in. By the way, you cannot run 6 guns safely in these guns. You can. I don't. I choose not to. I run 5 because there's no safety systems in them. The hammers do rebound, but I learned very early on in my career that if a gun drops like this on the hammer, they will fire. And I have I have witnessed that. But this is the old action, and we're going to go ahead and get some shots of it later. And it's the single. It goes like this, and then let it. This is a trigger. It pulls the hammer back, and then lets it fall. And the second part down here, because there's not another part to that gear. The second part down there is when you're doing single action. It comes back and locks up for single action. But on double action, you do not have double engagement. You have single engagement. And that's what happens when I get into these older guns. And if you don't have one of Topeka's book, this is number 4. I just ordered a 5 because I'm going to put my number 4 down at the store and bring the 5 home, see what new information is in it. But you can always find out what everything about every gun and what the changes were, and they're so much fun. If you haven't got into older Smith & Wessons and you're a Smith guy and you're still buying brand new stuff, you're missing a lot of the fun. These are coffee table books. These things should be out on everyone's coffee table that collects Smith & Wessons, so they can constantly update their mind on what their preferences are, what they see, what they want to do. But that's a free sales uh, job for Topeka right there in his Smith & Wesson catalogs. So these are my girls. I get excited about them. I know to a lot of people, when I first saw this gun come in the store, I just went, "Ooh, that's cool." And the guy goes, "It's an old comp gun." And I said, "If you only knew what was inside this thing, I'm going to take pictures for you. It's going to blow your mind what they used to do and how nicely they're finished and polished. And they're worried about the parts being centered, and they stamp patent dates on things. These are just pure class. And if you don't have an early Smith & Wesson M&P, I hope you find one." So that's my excitement on the K frames. And anybody tells you the brown butts are only on new guns, they're wrong. The round butts you can see were prevalent on both. This is the very first of the M&Ps, and this is like the final destination for the action. There were changes after the war, but this is really the final destination, and they are both round butts. The round butts sort of disappeared for a few years after the war, but then they brought them back for the cop guns. And I don't know if Fuzzy and Blackford and the others cutting up the frames to make them smaller had anything to do with Smith going back to round butts, but they're a wonderful way to work. The smaller the frame, the more options you have for grips. The larger the frame, you have to accommodate the larger frame, grip frame. So there's the K-frames for you right there. Hope you enjoyed this presentation, and send your comments and questions, and I'll try to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.